Americans For Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans For Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, April 26, 2019. The 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act created opportunity zone investments and tax benefits for those investing in them. While this sounds good, use the income tax code to help bring investment to needy areas, it's really designed to bribe higher income people. This information is provided by the IRS. An opportunity zone is an economically distressed community where new investments under certain conditions may be eligible for preferential tax treatment. Localities qualify as opportunity zones if they've been nominated for that designation by the state and that nomination has been certified by the Secretary of the Treasury via his delegation of authority to the Internal Revenue Service. Opportunity zones are designed to spur economic development and job creation in distressed communities. And opportunity zones provide tax benefits to investors. First, investors can defer tax on any prior gains invested in a qualified opportunity fund, or QOF, until the earlier of the date on which the investment is sold or exchanged, or December 31st, 2026. If the QOF investment is held for longer than 5 years, there is a 10% exclusion of the deferred gain. If held for more than 7 years, that 10% becomes 15%. And second, if the investor holds the investment in the opportunity fund for at least 10 years, the investor is eligible for an increase in basis on the QOF investment equal to its fair market value on the date that the investment is sold or exchanged. Now, just who invests in opportunity zones and what do they get for it? The question to ask when you look at gifts from the swamp and their allies in Congress, like the opportunity zone legislation, is who benefits? And that's an easy one. The people who benefit are the people who have made sales of assets and have capital gains. For example, a person selling Apple stock in April of 2019 and receiving a $10 million capital gain will ordinarily owe approximately $2 million in U.S. capital gains tax. Then the person will have $8 million remaining to reinvest. Now, that same person investing the $10 million in an opportunity zone property in May of 2019 has these results. Defer paying the $2 million in capital gains tax until 2026, is able to use this interest-free loan of $2 million to invest in a property, not $8 million, but the whole $10 million, and if the investor does not liquidate the opportunity zone property until after 10 years, the person will be able to sell and realize no income tax from that sale. So, the answer to the question, who benefits, is people who have large capital gains and can afford to reinvest those gains where they are illiquid in an investment for 10 years, and that would be the most affluent among us. Now, the swamp and their compliant members know that the way to stifle criticism of the income payroll tax system is to bribe the people who might be its most effective critics. People who have capital gains and who can tie up money for 10 years can also afford to contribute to politicians and may even control companies that can direct even more money to politicians. If these people oppose the present income payroll tax system, they could add a lot of energy to the efforts by most of us who don't have these resources. However, by providing these groups a benefit, that is, by reducing the taxes they would otherwise pay and putting the burden to pay those deferred taxes on the rest of us, they hope to buy their silence. By giving this segment of our society this tax benefit, they're also sending them a message. If you start attacking the swamp, those benefits can be taken away and you'll be punished with higher tax rates. So forget the opportunity zone stuff. There is a better way. When the fair tax passes, there will be no income payroll tax. A person who is fortunate to have a $1,000 capital gain or a $10 million capital gain, doesn't matter, they pay no federal tax on it until and unless they decide to spend that money on the retail purchase of new goods and services. The swamp in Congress will not be able to use tax dollars from the rest of us to reward someone that they want to silence or to direct where those people should be investing their money. The fair tax will allow people to make investments that they believe make sense, not ones motivated by a desire to save some tax dollars. People say, well, isn't the purpose of the Opportunity Zone legislation to help bring investment to areas that are not doing well economically? Well, the answer to that question, of course, is yes, but the fair tax can do it better. The fair tax is the most efficient and least harmful way to fund the federal government. Now, of course, by showing the cost of government on every purchase of new goods and retail services, the swamp fears that people will see how much their federal government is costing them and will rebel at the ballot box. However, since the fair tax will help the economy grow more rapidly, it will generate far more money for the federal government than the current income payroll tax system. The purpose of Congress is to appropriate money. If Congress wants to help develop certain Opportunity Zone areas, then it can appropriate money to loan at very good rates to developers or to provide other benefits. Any appropriation by Congress is open for all to see. So if Congress is wasting our money, they can be forced to explain why they're doing it and not hide behind the fog created by providing benefits through the income tax. In conclusion, we understand that the swamp and the bureaucracy in D.C. believe that they're smarter than the rest of us and therefore they should be the ones making our decisions for us. We understand that the swamp and the bureaucracy in D.C. depend on their ability to set up complicated ways to control us for their livelihood. Even though Congress and the swamp don't want to have their actions out in the open for all to see, don't we deserve to see what's happening with our money? However, they need to understand that their feeding frenzy at the public trough is coming to an end as more and more Americans wake up to the truth. We're being given scraps while the swamp and their friends dine elegantly, and then we're stuck with paying the bill. Now, nothing will send a message to the swamp and Congress that they are not our masters anymore, like passing the fair tax. Now, is passing the fair tax something we can do? We believe so, because the more light that is cast on the swamp in Congress, the more people will conclude that enough is enough. As Nelson Mandela said about his decades-long fight against apartheid, it always seems impossible until it gets done.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org or bigsolution.org.